Well, today I am so excited. Today is a really special day for Taking Stock Live. We have Jill Standish here, who not only is the leader of Accenture's worldwide retail vertical, but frankly, just an unbelievable friend, somebody that I've turned to for a long time, longer than I'm going to admit, for advice on all things professional and personal. And so, as the leader of Accenture North America for retail, our doors have darkened many of the same doors. So, Jill, first, just huge thank you to be here today for Taking Stock Live.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here, and it's nice to be interviewed by a friend. I consider you not just a colleague, but a friend. So,
for sure. So let's see. I know that by the end of this interview, everyone will be as in awe of you as I have been. But take us back. Tell us about your role at Accenture and really what gets you going in this role.
You know, I've been with the firm for it'll be 5 years in March. And what I do with Accenture is I lead the retail practice, as you said, globally. And I came in, and one of the things that I thought about was, how am I going to make this something that's even better than it is today? And so there's really two big, I guess, movements that I'm on. I mean, really, if you think about the basic focus of the work that we do, it's really trying to get these retailers to survive and thrive and be a little bit more agile in the future. And we're calling that adaptive. I mean, I don't know how many things you've adapted in your life, my darling, but I have to. And so can I take some of that personal adaptation and create it into our companies? Absolutely. So that's kind of one is being so resilient to change. The second one is really around all around ESG and sustainability. As we know, retail is number 2 behind oil and gas as one of the worst industries, adding to our problem with the climate. And, you know, I just think that in a world where we have so much going on and there's so much transparency with consumers, you know, retailers really need to pay attention. And so this whole idea around sustainability is a big one for me too.
Absolutely. And one of the many things that I've always admired about you is that you bring your full self to work, into every meeting, into every conversation. And so sort of the blend between, keeping things more simple and adaptable, as well as sustainability, that's just how you move through the world. But many don't know you the way I have had the privilege to. So tell us some things that people might not know about you.
Well, let me start by saying I'm probably the biggest adaptable person ever. I've worked for 4 different companies, so I've changed my business card. This is my 4th. So I started with NCR, then went to IBM, then went to Oracle, and now here at Accenture. And I finally found my true home. I mean, this is just a fabulous firm. So that's change. I've changed my name actually 3 times. Well, I've had 3 names. I've changed it twice. So I had my maiden name, then I got married and changed my name, and then I got married again and changed my name. So, and then I've never lived in a house, Shelley, for more than 10 years. So I've moved a lot. So, I'm pretty adaptable. And one of the things that I've raised boys, so I have 2 sons, and then when I got married, my husband has 2 sons and a daughter. So we've got all these boys. And I know you've got 2 boys too. So it's this like male dominating household that I've lived in. And one of my themes, as I've changed, my homes, as I've changed my firms, I have one common thing. And that is my love of flowers.
Oh.
And my love of flowers dates back a long time. And because I've raised these boys in a very male dominated home, I put flowers on the table. And there's always fresh flowers. I think there's flowers behind me.
Yeah, they're orchids, yeah.
So there's flowers wherever I go, because that just symbolizes home to me. And also I'm trying to make my kids, not that I'm trying to change who they are, but I want them to know that, it just reminds me of growth, and flowers are so special. And so just makes a home, makes a house a home. So There's always flowers on the table.
Amazing. I didn't know that about you. And it's yet another thing besides two boys and yoga that we share. I buy a lot of flowers too. Do you buy them for yourself or what
Yeah,
where do you get your flowers?
Well, there's a funny story.
Okay.
When I was a little kid, I'm not kidding. Like I think I was like coming home from kindergarten. So when are you, 5 or 6? And it was May Day. And I knocked, I came home, I walked home from school and I knocked on the door and my mom answered the door to home. And I had this huge bouquet of flowers for my mother. And she says, "Where did you get those? Those are lovely." And I had picked flowers from all the neighbors.
Resourceful.
So what I do is I really do, whenever I move to a new place, I always plant flowers. And so I'm constantly cutting my own flowers and bringing them indoors. So I buy them when I have to, but I also grow them as well.
Well, congrats on your new home. I can't wait to see it when all this is over.
You're invited, Shelley. You can come.
I will come either way. Thank you. We had this year for all of us, 2020 has been a year like none other to share all the cliches. You said you're adaptable, and I know that about you. How are you helping, and how is Accenture helping your customers and our mutual customers navigate this unbelievable, unprecedented time?
Yeah, I mean, our practice is pretty large. And if you consider some of the speciality that we have, whether it's in the digital space or in the supply chain space, the first thing that we got called upon was help us figure out how to stay open, or get our digital footprint to be where it needs to be to handle the demand. So that was kind of the first thing. As we kept going, I'll tell you, then it was a supply chain. So the supply chain work that we did. I mean, a lot of our clients got caught off guard with how linear their supply chain was, how static it was. And so that's kind of like phase 2. Phase 3, which is not that the pandemic has kind of calmed down yet, because it hasn't, but I think phase 3 is all around employee safety and making sure that, they're remodeling stores, they're changing policies and procedures, they're closing down fitting rooms. I mean, what do you do with returns? I mean, that's a huge one. And then I think that the last phase, which I'd say we're entering into, kind of approaching the end of the year, it's usually budget time for retailers right now, is the cost to serve. And, what is it costing to do all of this last mile delivery and, thinking about more of their sales being online versus not. We all know that that's more expensive. It hits into their margin. And so this whole idea of cost to serve is going to be a big one. And so getting our practice rallied around, let's take cost out of one area of the business and reimagine what your P&L looks like and how you don't have to pass those costs along to the consumer. Let's figure out how to be a little bit more nimble. That to me was, that's kind of the next phase. And I know we work with you guys because this whole remote working, I should have said that at the beginning. I mean, at the very beginning, it wasn't just about digital. It was get my whole campus to be remote. I mean, gosh, Shelley, most of these clients have campuses like a college, where everyone goes in every day. And boy, they had to turn that around overnight. They had to scatter their teams and set them up at home and get them on Teams. Little plug. And, and that was hard. Just think of the security and, I can't believe we've been at this now since March. I mean, it's just changed completely the way all of us are working, and it's changed the culture of a lot of these companies. So that's kind of the phases we've gone through.
Yeah, they're so aligned. And as you said, we work together closely with a lot of these customers. I think in the initial phases, we're saying sort of respond, recover, and reimagine. But to your point, I think we're we keep going through them, we're cycling them through them because as soon as we think we're done with one response, we're going through another wave of it.
Yeah, I mean, look what's going to happen. One of the things that was interesting about this hitting when it did was we didn't have really bad weather at the beginning, if you think about it. I mean, March is not really that great, but now that we're kind of used to, consumers are anyway, used to queuing up in line and waiting to get into certain stores. And, now that the weather's getting tricky, now what do we do? I mean, it's cold here today, and heaven forbid it's going to snow. So, so people, if that's the case, are people really going to want to queue? And so there's a lot of reimagining going on. To your point, remote styling in the apparel space, or doing the queuing through technology, so that you don't have to wait outside. Making appointments. I mean, that's all a technology-driven process for these companies, and a lot of them had to, turn on a dime. And even just setting up curbside pickup. I mean, we did this for a client in 48 hours across the chain, and it was amazing that we could do it. I mean, and so technology is really helping a lot of this, and I think that's what's keeping a lot of these doors open. Is leveraging the technology that we work together on.
Yeah, well, and like the examples, whether it's Intermarché and the data factory that we have stood up together, or the Milan Fashion Week, which you really helped us, bring completely virtually, which democratized that whole experience for consumers around the world. I think what I love about working with you is you don't just take what's old and digitize it. You think about what's the new incarnation of that.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're going to go back the way we were before. I think will Fashion Week be the same as it was? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some in person, but, it worked. I mean, it wasn't as the same, but it was certainly more efficient, and you probably got more viewers the way we did it together versus having people just fly in. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You talk about being adaptive at the beginning, and Accenture really talks about adaptive retail. Maybe explain even more what that means for our industry today.
Yeah, I mean, we started the year with responsible retail, and now we're in adaptive. And I think, first of all, everyone was very responsible during this pandemic. If you just think about what essential and non-essential retailers did to remain in business or take care of their employees, et cetera. But now this adaptive word is really important. And the way that we think about it is really in three ways. The first is adapting to new ways of working. We talked a little bit about that, which is, working remotely and dealing with employees that are remotely. But it's also new ways of working with suppliers. We see a huge, increase in the need to have inclusion and diversity in your supply chain, and making sure that that's transparent to the consumer, because consumers are demanding it. So that's the new ways of working. You can just think of all the things that are in that, whether that's remote working, or dealing with partnering differently, or dealing with your ecosystem partners differently, or so that whole new ways of working is just amazing. The next one is really around climates and dealing with climates. And when I say climates, I mean really not just climate change, as I talked about sustainability, but there's new climate in our society. There's such sensitivity out there with racial indiscretion and all of the movements that are going on in our world. Just think of what happened with voting in this country. And that just went viral globally, since the murder of George Floyd. Now society has kind of taken note, and it's just amazing to see our retail clients actually stand up against some of these and take a stand and be very vocal about it. I like to say consumers are voting with their values and their pocketbook. Well, that's certainly true, and I think brands and retailers are needing to do that. So that's the second one, is about climate and climates. The last one is about dealing with adapting to new expectations. And, I, for one, have watched this pandemic where everyone was really, really patient with retailers. They knew supply chains were under a tremendous amount of stress. They knew that they had to wait in line. People were patient, the whole mask thing, but now I think it's getting a little old, and consumers are like, what do you mean my delivery window's 2 weeks out? So I think expectations are going to be one of the things that we watch. And I think expectations, not just with consumers' expectations being what they are with delivery and all of that, but it's also investors. Yeah. Investors are watching these companies and saying, what is the makeup of your board? What are you doing for climate change? What are your goals with ESG? What is your supplier diversity plan? How are you mitigating future business risks in your supply chain? So that whole ESG management and de-risking the future of your business, I think that expectation is high. So those are the three things. Again, it's really adapting to new ways of working, adapting to new climates, and adapting to expectations that are different.
Yeah, and you have been really on the forefront of this. I remember, I think it was probably 2 years ago now, when you were the one person over the line first in this industry wanting to publish sort of the carbon impact of last mile of delivery and e-commerce, and bringing that transparency to retailers. I remember you published that thought leadership. And I completely agree that consumers' expectations for us as an industry to do that and provide that transparency, it's the bar is getting higher, not lower.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think of I think it's like 60 pounds of apparel per person per year go into a landfill. I mean, it's got to stop. And, I think awareness is part of it. Transparency is part of it. I was talking to a colleague the other day, Shelley, and we were saying, as a matter of fact, it started with my personal story of I bought some patio furniture because I moved, of course. And I bought this patio furniture in June and I still hadn't received it. And it's now September. Okay. So I'm thinking, look, all right, I'm patient enough. I know that supply chains are tough, but it's freaking September. So can we
it's going to be covered in snow soon.
No, I mean, like, it was such a wasted purchase, right? So finally, I was so patient with the company, and they were saying, oh, it's our manufacturer's fault, and oh, the port of LA is tough, and oh, it's on a train. And finally, I said, listen, I really need to make a change. And so they gave me my money back after giving me discount after discount. And I finally bought it from someone else. And I'm thinking to myself, that whole process could have been so much better if they had just been transparent. And I knew why things were slowed down, or I knew why things were stuck. I might not have called as much. They might not have had to give me a discount. So this transparency, I think, will start to hit us, not just about what's in products and how it's made and where it's sourced, but maybe where it is in its delivery to you.
Absolutely.
And that transparency, Microsoft and Accenture, people like us can actually help clients do this with the cloud, with IoT, think about it, with RFID. There's just so much we can do here, which I think would be amazing in the future.
I mean, I think that's what, one of the things that gets me out of bed too, is that it's like Amazon, but it's like that experience that you just articulated. Actually, if the retailer had just, communicated more consistently along your shopping journey to you, you're not tempted to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
it's expensive for them to keep staff on these on these call centers. I mean, gosh, we could just eliminate call centers if things were transparent. Where's my order? Just tell me. Right. And if I know that the driver got a flat, I would be empathetic. I might give him a tip when he delivers something, but if you don't tell me, I'm going to get upset and call the call center.
Yeah. So that's a great tee up for the next question, which is really, what are some of the biggest lessons learned that you're seeing customers learn sort of in navigating this pandemic?
Yeah, I think, the first was these leaders. I mean, I'm on the board of RELA, and I get together with CEOs every week. And the first lesson was how they learned from each other. I mean, Shelley, you and I have been in this industry our whole career, and I've never seen such a camaraderie and a collaborative spirit between the leaders in this industry. So this, like, all for one for all, we're in this together. I mean, you hear that expression, we're in this together, so much, but for them, I think it really was true. And they were learning from each other. So the stores that were essential were sharing what it's like to run a store with plexiglass and PPE and signage, and dealing with customer feedback around having to put on a mask. I mean, that was just stuff that, that playbook has never been written. And so I think that collaboration, that was one lesson, was everyone dropped their competitive spirit and just said, gosh, what are you doing? Help me, I think the next lesson was around making decisions without a lot of data, which is a scary place. They were caught on the back foot. They couldn't make these. If you think about it, these companies like you and I, you needed to say everyone's going remote. Move out of the office, go remote. We're going remote starting this day. There was no playbook for that for a lot of these companies, and they didn't have a choice. They had to close their stores, and a lot of them didn't want to close their stores. The governor said non-essential retail closed. So a lot of these decisions, A, were really fast, and B, were not in their control. So moving forward, I think, I guess the last point is digital and the whole need for change. COVID was just this accelerant train that just took everything faster than what it was. We knew these trends were happening, but it sped it up like a bullet train. And so a lot of them are now looking back and saying, how do I get my digital footprint where it needs to be? How do I improve my experience? How do I do last mile without losing my shirt? I mean, all of those things, I think they all wish they had before COVID. Now, if we look forward, I like to say we're still flying into a fog. So who knows what's going to happen at Christmas? We don't know. I mean, look at New Mexico just shut down some stores, right? So who knows if we're going to have another shutdown? So how do they talk to the street? How do they give guidance? How do they make decisions? And I think one of the things that they're all asking for is this scenario modeling, which is kind of like this what if, what if stores get shut down? What if the vaccine takes too long? What if, and what does that mean for my business and my responsiveness? And to do that, you need some simulation, you need data, you need dashboards, you need, the things that I think all of us realize, but are they using it and do they have it so it's easily understood and easily used? And I think that to me is something that we can help with together.
Yeah.
Because they are flying into a fog. I mean, the analogy of flying into a fog, if you're a pilot, you need instruments. And I don't think this industry has the right instruments. They could use some help.
Yeah, and I think I couldn't agree more. And this was not intended to be a plug in any way, but for either of our necessary companies. Oh. But I do think, the challenge actually now is not the technology. It's not even necessarily having the right strategy. It's actually the change management and the courage to get the dashboard to fly through the fog. And I think, that's where I know, and I love AI.retail, which we're doing together, just creating some of those tools that can activate so that you do have that dashboard, because you're absolutely right. People ask me for scenario planning, what should we be doing? I wish I knew. I wish I knew, but I do know that they need the tools, and they need to activate their data, right?
Well, and if you think about it, retail, you started your career in this industry, for gosh sakes. And if you think about how retail grew up, it was all about perfecting efficiency and looking at last year versus this year and the models, what was on trend last year at this time. Yeah. Well, we've got to take a look at 2020 and go, holy crap, our model just got rocked.
Yes.
If you're in the grocery space, are you going to buy that much yeast and flour next year? Or are people going back to buying bread,
Right.
So, the models need to be smoothed. They need to look at demand differently. Right now it's funny. I was talking to a client yesterday, and they were saying that some of their A stores are now B stores, and B stores are now A stores because people have moved.
Interesting. These Zoom towns, I hate to say it because I love Teams, but everyone's saying these new people, the population distribution is changing so much, and it is affecting demand for these.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. People are fleeing the cities. It's just a really interesting time of change, right?
Yeah.
And in order to find where your customers went, you're going to have to use data. You're just going to have to figure that out. Where are people shipping things to?
Right.
So it really is very interesting. It was funny. We were on this call earlier, and there was a professor talking to us about, and here was his quote. It was a good one. He said, people are no longer going to move for work. They're going to be able to live where they want to live for work. I mean, you moved.
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at us.
Yeah, and completely. And friends of mine who have been working at, some of these non-essential retailers, while it's been a very tough period, as they're looking for new roles, they're no longer constrained by the geography of retail companies. I know someone in the US who's interviewing for a job in Sweden, and, all of a sudden that is accessible to her in a different way than it was, 9 months ago. So.
And look at our talent. How the talent is so accessible now too, Shelley. I mean, I'm leveraging some of our experts around the globe. I don't have to get them on an airplane.
Tell us some of the bigger lessons, not just pandemic, but
okay.
You're such a, I know you mentor so many people. You're such an inspiration to so many people. What are some of the bigger lessons you've learned personally and professionally?
Well, and I shared this one with you. I'm not going to bring up your life, but having gone through what I went through with changing firms, going through a divorce, getting remarried, moving, I think the theme throughout all of that is you're never stuck. And, I think the day that I say to myself, I'm stuck, is the day that I don't know, maybe the last day of my life, because and that's a great lesson for young people, because, sometimes you feel like you have to stay either in a place or in a firm or in a relationship. And man, if you start to get sour, I never wanted anyone around me to see that I was sour. And so as soon as I knew that I was getting sour, I had to move on. And so I encourage people to never get stuck.
What are some closing thoughts?
There is some kind of bright lights that I think this pandemic has taught us all. And, as you look to what we've all been through, it really has created almost a more human way that we're doing work. I mean, I remember when I was a young mother and my kids were running around, and I used to just, put on mute, and that was when we didn't have video, by the way. So it was a little easier, but I'd put on mute and I'd be like, like, get out of here. I had the flick. I would do this, like, an interesting story. My 26-year-old, he's so funny. He told me, he says, Mom, this whole remote learning thing, you would have really been bad at it. I said, wow, that is terrible. How do you say that about me? He says, well, because I remember, he told me this. He says, I remember when I was sick, when I got up in the morning, I was sick, I threw up, and you said, have a piece of toast, get on the bus.
That doesn't seem very nurturing.
Because I had to go to work,
Right.
But fast forward, how many times have you been on a call and a kid's walking in, a dog's barking, the doorbell's ringing? And it's like, who cares?
Right.
We all get it.
Right.
So I think, if I think of the contrast between when I started working and I was hiding it to now we're embracing it. And let's not go back to hiding it, I love the fact that, you've got kids and sometimes they run up and, it's because that's you. That's who you are.
Right.
And you're almost inviting people to know who you are more.
Yeah. I can't even number the amount of times they're not with this angle. Like, people have asked me about, a photograph, which is from Cuba, which is where I love to travel, a picture of my kid. Like, we are, and like seeing your, it is, you get, in a way, we're getting a more authentic vision of each other, or version of each other, than just being in a stale conference room where, we don't really know much like where we are in our environments.
Yeah. And so that's, I hope we don't go back, I do miss the going out to dinner with Shelley moments. And I miss the camaraderie and the creativity that comes with those ad hoc conversations. But, we haven't figured that out yet on digital. But everything else, we can do this. Yeah. We can do this. We obviously can, and we are.
And I think, I don't think we will go. I think like retail, where there will be transactional retail and there will be experiential retail and there'll be separate but important depending on where you are. I think in the same way, we can do so much this way. And then when we need to be together, for brainstorming or, just have that glass of wine, I think we'll just be more intentional about it. That's at least my hope.
Yeah. And honestly, we'll probably appreciate it more.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, honestly, the next plane that I take, hopefully I won't have to wear a mask and we'll be done with this stuff. Right. I can't wait to get on a long trip with a glass of wine and a movie.
Yeah, I'll come with you. Just put me in your rolly bag wherever you're going.
Oh, it'll be a blast. We'll do a trip together. Oh, God.
I have a whole group of friends who are traveling for work, believe it or not. They don't serve alcohol on the planes anymore. So there's a whole strategy of how to do it. I'll share with you later. Well, you and I could talk for hours.
I know. Really.
I just kind of want to stop where I started, which is a huge amount of thank you, obviously for being with me today, with the audience of Taking Stock Live, but mostly for just being who you are in the world and a leader that so many people in this industry just look up to every day as an inspiration and a real thought leader. So thank you.
You're so sweet. And back at you, sister. Back at you, sister. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And for all of you who have tuned in today, thank you to you. This was really incredible. We have more amazing content coming your way. We'll be continuing to publish great folks that are coming and talking to me about what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, and where the future is going. So thank you for today, and keep watching for what we announce later. Thank you.